Second Punic War. Welcome back. Hope you guys are doing well. So, last time we had told you guys about how Rome had decimated the armies of Carthage and had taken the island of Sicily and had forced a treaty on Carthage, the terms of which were totally in favor of the Romans. Well, this peace accord didn't sit well with many in Carthage, and soon an even bloodier war would break out between the two great empires. So today, we are going to talk about the Second Punic War and how it set the tone for the future of the region. Let's begin the video. Following the defeat in the First War, Carthage looked to rebuild its power, and Spain looked ripe for the taking. The great Phoenician general Hamilkar Barca felt humiliated at the terms of the peace accord and looked at Spain as the prime spot for launching an overland assault on Rome. His hatred for Rome would seep into his son, Hannibal, who would be recognized as one of Rome's biggest enemies. By 220 BC, while the Romans were busy in Cisalpine Gaul and Illyricum, Hannibal and his brother Hasdrubal took control of the Hispania Peninsula to almost as far as the Iberus River. Rome, concerned over the growing influence of Carthage, signed a treaty with them to limit expansion to anything south of the Iberus River. To strengthen their position, they allied with Saguntum, a small town in the territory, which gave them a stronghold in the heart of the Carthaginian territory. In 221 BC, Hamilkar was assassinated, and Hannibal rose to power. His hatred for Rome was famous throughout the land, and after taking power, he set out subduing all the rebellions in the area so that he could put all his concentration on Rome. Within a year, he was able to stamp out all dissidents, and now he looked towards Saguntum to goad the Romans into war. The same year, he laid siege to the small town, and within 8 months, he had managed to take control of the Roman stronghold. Following this victory, Hannibal chose to winter in Carthago Nova and spent the time planning an assault on Rome. However, he knew that an overseas victory was almost impossible, and the only way forward was an overland assault on Italy herself. So he planned to march through southern Gaul, enlisting help from the local tribes who had their own issues with the Roman Empire. Considering the situation in Spain, Rome sent an envoy to Carthage to look for a diplomatic solution, but the envoy was received coldly. It was said that Fabius, the Roman envoy, took the folds of his toga in his hand and said, "We bring you war or peace. Choose which you want." The Carthaginian court replied with an indifference, which angered the Romans, who now began preparations for the upcoming war. Early in the spring of 218 BC, Hannibal set out north of the Iberus River, leaving his brother Hasdrubal with 16,000 troops to maintain control of Spain and protect the interests of Carthage. With an army of 80,000 infantry, 12,000 Numidian and Iberian cavalry, and a number of elephants, Hannibal set out to conquer Rome. The war had officially begun. On his way, he conquered many Celtic tribes and left General Hanno with 10,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry to keep the area between the Iberus and Pyrenees under control. After deductions, Hannibal moved forward with 50,000 infantry, 9,000 cavalry, and his elephants. Once he was in Gaul, there were few skirmishes with the local Celts, but the Gallic Celts were no friends of Rome and eagerly joined his army. His army used makeshift boats and wooden platforms to aid in the crossing on reaching the river Rhone. On the other end, some Gauls tried to disrupt the crossing, but Hanno had already crossed the river upstream, and he attacked Gaul from the river, crushing any sort of danger for the crossing army. With allies all around Hannibal, Rome's only option was to meet the Carthaginian forces at Rome. Two armies, one under Cornelius Scopio the Elder and the other T. Sempronius, were supposed to be sent to Africa and Spain respectively, But the rebellion in Cisalpine Gaul altered the plans of Rome, as the forces meant for Spain were now diverted towards Gaul. Another army was raised to meet Hannibal before he could reach the safety of the Alps, but predicting a Roman roadblock, Hannibal had already moved his force northward and marched his army towards the Alps. Scopio was forced to go back to Italy to wait for the impeding attack, and most of his army was sent to Spain. Now in Gaul territory, Hannibal took full advantage of their hatred for the Romans and made an agreement with the Gauls to aid his army in crossing the Alps. A civil war between the Gauls also worked in Hannibal's favor. In exchange for securing the new chief, his army was given food and provisions. By October 2018 BC, Hannibal and his men started the difficult journey through the Alps. In the Alps, Hannibal and his army were continuously harassed by the local Celts, who used to roll down boulders from the mountaintops, which would lead to casualties and panic within the Carthaginian ranks. But Hannibal's will was relentless, and he took down any challenges that came before him, even conquering a Gaul town in the process. 15 days later, Hannibal stepped down into the foothills of Italy. His army had been depleted to only 20,000 men and 6,000 cavalry with a few elephants. But the local Celts provided immense support, and soon the number of the army once again went up to around 30 to 40,000. The first direct conflict of the war was at the Battle of Ticinus, where the small Roman force was crushed and Scopio the Elder critically wounded. This forced the Romans to retreat out of Gaul, which made Hannibal even more popular with the locals, and his army continued to grow from fresh recruits. The remaining legions of Scopio banded together with Tis Sempronius Longus at the Trebia River. With Scopio out of commission, Longus threw caution to the wind and marched on Hannibal. Expecting an attack, Hannibal hid many of his men in the riverbeds and used the Numidian cavalry to harass the Roman force, who, angered, marched out to meet the Carthaginian forces. As the two armies met, the tide of the battles looked to be going in favor of the Romans, but at this point, Hannibal sprung his trap. The Romans were taken completely unaware, and almost half of the Roman forces, around 15,000 to 20,000, were cut down in the ensuing confusion. Hannibal lost his elephants, but his main army still stood strong. This was the first victory for Hannibal in Italy. Angered, the Romans appointed Consul Flaminius to deal with Hannibal. He was rash and eager to meet the Carthaginian forces in battle and rushed towards Hannibal, who had already prepared another trap for the Romans at Lake Trasimeno. Hannibal chose the spot as it would force the Romans to fight between a river and the hills. Once the Romans reached the battleground, Hannibal tricked into believing that his forces were camped at a much greater distance. However, early in the morning, Hannibal ordered a full assault. Caught off guard, the Romans tried to fight back, but it was all for nothing. Out of 25,000 men, Rome lost as many as 15,000, including Flaminius. 4,000 cavalry had been sent to reinforce the army, but that too was caught and completely routed. It is said that the blood from the battlefield was so thick in the lake that a small stream feeding it was renamed the Blood River. As reports of the loss reached Rome, fear and anguish gripped the public, as this was one of the worst losses in Roman history. Fabius Maximus was appointed as dictator to deal with Hannibal. Fabius knew his armies didn't stand a chance in open combat, so he chose to delay and harass the Carthaginian forces. Hannibal's general, fresh on the euphoria of victory, recommended a siege of Rome, but Hannibal knew better. His army was ill-equipped for a drawn-out siege, and the open rebellion he had been trying to orchestrate wasn't happening. So Hannibal decided to march south to have better success with people in joining his cause. Hannibal crossed the Apennines and spent the summer of 217 BC scouring southern Italy. He invaded Picenum, Apulia, and Campania. Seeing loss after loss, Fabius was removed as a dictator, and consuls Gaius Terentius and Aemilius Paulus were elected. They raised an army of around 70 to 80,000 men and marched after Hannibal. The two forces would meet at Cannae, and the ensuing battle would be one of the bloodiest in Roman history. The two armies met on the Apulian plains. The odds looked to favor the Romans, as they had a 2-to-1 advantage over the Carthaginian forces. However, Hannibal Barca had already displayed his strategic powers before, and this battle was not going to be any different. The battle started off with the clash of cavalry detachments. Hasdrubal led the Carthaginian cavalry, and his Numidian riders dealt quickly with the Romans, and soon he was quickly able to reach the flank of the Romans. But the Roman infantry was not so quick to fall, and as the battle continued, they continued to push through the center of Hannibal's forces. Soon, it looked like the Romans were going to crush the center of their enemy, but that is when things turned on their head. The Carthaginian flanks were brought to bear, and Hasdrubal's cavalry completed the circle. The enemy now surrounded the Romans, and at this point, Hannibal brought forward his archers and slingers to annihilate the Roman force. It was an absolute massacre. The consul Paulus perished with his men. It is said that at least 60,000 Roman corpses were piled one on top of another. Another 3,000 were captured, but Hannibal let them go, and Consul Paulus was buried with ceremonial rites as a testament to his bravery on the battlefield. Along with Paulus, both quaestors were killed. 29 military tribunes and about 80 senators lost their life in this battle. The rings of the Roman elite were gathered and then thrown down on the floor of the Carthaginian Senate as a sign of disrespect. The battle sent waves of panic and dismay through Rome. It looked like nothing could stop Hannibal from marching on Rome itself. But Hannibal still didn't feel that he had enough power and put under siege. After such a loss, many would have expected the Romans to crumble, but they were a resilient bunch. Military leaders like Scopio rallied the Romans, and shortly after Cannae, Rome was back. Full mobilization was declared, and every man fit for military service was welcome. The Romans chose Marcus Claudius Marcellus as the commander of their southern army, and he was told to engage Hannibal. With winter approaching, the forces of Carthage set out for Capua, where they were welcomed with open arms. Before that, Hannibal had attempted to take Neapolis, but was repulsed. Soon, many of Rome's allies were in open rebellion and supported Hannibal Barca. But this didn't deter the Romans. They continued to resist Hannibal's forces and resorted to Fabius's technique of harassing the enemy and keeping allied towns in control. In 212 BC, Hannibal took the town of Tarentum, killing all the Romans within and leaving the Tarentine locals untouched. Hannibal desperately needed support from Carthage, but none had come so far. In Sicily, the pro-Roman king died and his son allied with Carthage, but Marcellus was immediately sent to quell the rebellion, and soon Sicily came back into the hands of the Romans. Marcellus crossed back into Italy and went to meet Hannibal's forces head-on. Before the battle with Marcellus, Hannibal had won another victory at Herdona, killing around 16,000 Romans. The Battle of Numistro ended in a bloody draw. With Hannibal withdrawing his forces, his army could no longer keep up with the same momentum as they required serious reinforcements. The year 209 BC proved to be the turning point for the Romans, who began to recapture their lost territories. One after the other, they began to fall into Roman hands. In Spain, Scopio the Younger, later called Afrinicus, continued to pummel the Carthaginian forces and put back Roman supremacy. However, Hannibal wasn't giving up so easily, and in 208 BC, Hannibal's army defeated Marcellus's forces, and the Roman commander lost his life in the skirmish. The sword of Rome had been broken, but the victory did little to help Hannibal, whose forces were undermanned and needed serious help. He asked his brother Hasdrubal for help. However, the Romans were aware of this move, and before Hasdrubal could join up with Hannibal, they destroyed his forces and killed Hasdrubal in the Battle of Metaurus. Soon, Spain would also fall into Roman hands. Scopio, the Roman commander in Spain, then began his invasion of Africa, defeating every army that Carthage sent his way and captured many towns within Carthaginian territory. Carthage was forced to sue for peace. However, the peace looked temporary, as the Carthaginians had recalled Hannibal from Italy. In 202 BC, Hannibal marched against Scopio with an army of 25,000 in addition to his 12,000 veterans. The Battle of Zuma followed as the two great generals marshaled their forces. Scopio rejected an initial parley, and as the battle began, Scopio strategically mimicked Hannibal's strategy at Cannae. He used the Carthaginians' own elephants to spew panic among Hannibal's army, and encircled Hannibal's army in the ensuing chaos. 16 years after the invasion of Italy, Hannibal's army was crushed, and Carthage was defeated. 20,000 Carthaginians lay dead, with an equal number as prisoners to be sold as slaves. Hannibal was, however, able to escape the slaughterhouse, and he returned to Hadrumetum and told the Senate to accept any of the terms as resistance was futile. The Second Punic War was over. Spain was forever lost to Carthage, and they had to pay over 10,000 talents, give away all but 10 warships and elephants, and weren't allowed to marshal an army without the permission of Rome. If it had not been for Scopio, the mighty Roman Empire might not have existed today. With the victory in the war, Rome had not only taken control of Spain and Egypt, in addition to its other territories, but had become a global superpower, to be feared and revered by all. So ended the Second Punic War. Hope you guys liked the video. Subscribe to our channel to view similarly amazing videos, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to receive instant notifications from our side. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.